So I'd like to discuss a strategy to rid ourselves of the dependency on foreign oil and to change the way in which we live today.
Instead of spending $1 billion a day to import foreign oil, we should make cars that don't use a drop of fossil fuel.
So what's the opportunity for veterans, for civilians, for people in the military and everywhere? It's about deploying these electric vehicle chargers in pretty much every place. And the more we have available to us, the more people will be inspired to buy electric vehicles. And the more electric vehicles people buy, the more demands on electric vehicle charging stations will happen. And you could start to get a sense of the importance of building that together. And eventually, what that will really form is a very strong tipping point. And I know this from real experience. Once you start driving electric miles, that becomes the new exciting thing, and you remove yourself from this dependency on foreign oil and from the price of gasoline fluctuations. So I really spend a lot of time on business models. I'm an engineer from schooling, but I'm more of an economist, and I look at what's it cost to get into this, what's it cost on a macroeconomic level, and more importantly, in a sense, what's it cost us on a microeconomic level? Can we afford to go buy an electric vehicle? In order to analyze the importance of electric vehicle infrastructure, I lead authored a guide. We have the booklet and then the guide, and the guide is accessible now by the BC3. They helped produce this guide. It is available on my website and also available on the BC3's website. That's the Business Council for Climate Change. It's been distributed by Silicon Valley Leadership Group and Bay Area Climate Council. Congresswoman Spears spoke about the oil companies of drill, baby drill, and I frankly don't blame the oil companies because it's very inefficient to transfer 90 million barrels of oil from faraway places into the United States, and we're the ones using that energy. We have relatively low gas prices worldwide, but that is changing. So you can't really blame the oil companies as bringing all this oil to us and distributing this energy to us because we're the ones that need it today. But when you look at the system is flawed and it's inefficient. And not only that, the fossil fuel dependence leads to CO2 spewed into the atmosphere, and believe what you want, and I'm not going to get into the debate. The scientists who are seeing the future, it's not as good as we always want it to be. So if we can deploy these, and I'm going to give you some real-world examples of how to get this done, this is a highly effective strategy to get us off oil and into electrons. And once we get into electrons, you're going to see how exciting the world gets. So you guys already know this, but it's important to know the Great Recession, which we just had in 2008, it was certainly catalyzed by the credit crunch in the housing market, but I like to say it was really paralyzed by the price of oil. And when we went above $100 a barrel and then even hit $140 a barrel, what that meant to the American people and the households had a very adverse effect. And I got to be frank, a lot of people don't always associate the biggest problem with going to the pump and paying $20 more as you go to dinner and you spend $150 for dinner sometimes to entertain guests, or $40 for a bottle of wine. You don't always get affected at the pump. But what it really means is that as the price of gas goes up and up, there's no longer much expendable income. And even people who can afford the price of gas at the pump, they can't expand their companies because nobody's buying their product. So there's this huge ripple effect on the economy. And there really is this horrendous situation happening. The world is a very different place now. And although we are free and we're Americans and we live in the best country in the world, we really have some challenges ahead. And this is a solution, a true military deployed solution on the front lines here in the U.S. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, how you can get involved. So here's where the fun begins, now that I got that out of the way. The reality is, a year ago, we had the Tesla Roadster. That's it. Brilliant minds. Martin Eberhard, then Elon Musk, with a great vision. And then we've got the Nissan Leaf, a phenomenal vehicle, innovative, car of the year, you name it. You just saw your first one, some of you, today. And the Chevy Volt, an amazing design to allow you to use mostly electric miles, but not get stranded if you have to make a long trip. We've only got 3 or 4 or 5 vehicles today. In a few years, we'll have 20. A few more years after that, 100. And at that point, we're going to need to charge them. Well, we need to charge them now, but as they grow, you're going to need more pervasive charging. And this is where I believe we've created a model at EV Advise and the EV team for the vision of how to employ people at the front lines of our nation to put these electric vehicle charging stations in to accommodate electric miles and then do something much greater. So I've done a lot of engineering analysis. You can go to my website and see more, but I've been able to prove in sort of a fun way, I'm not too hardcore scientific, but in a fun way, I could show you a real-world example where a Nissan Leaf versus a 25 mile per gallon ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine, ICE vehicle, and look at the numbers. Human nature suggests that when we buy cars, we buy them in such a way where, we go, I really like that, it's cool, it's red, it looks nice, it's part of my emotional identification. Oh gosh, it's too expensive, I really can't afford 19 or 90,000, but I'm going to kind of reach into the checkbook and buy it. And it's human nature. We're wired to the sort of immediate response. But if you do a little analysis, and this is what my company does, it'll show you that that decision to buy an ICE vehicle is going to cost you dearly over the use of the vehicle. So let's look at the growth of this market. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure is a huge market. Some pundits suggest that for every one vehicle out there for an EV, there should be at least 2 chargers. It makes sense. Obama talked about 1 million electric vehicles. Our numbers from Frost & Sullivan, it could be 1.5, it could be 2.2. There's some other numbers that suggest it'll be less than that. But as long as there's electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the world, we can see this really start to take off. So our company does all the analysis on what it takes to deploy electric vehicle charging infrastructure and how to get it done and what are the business models around that business. And we've come up with some innovative models, and we'd like to talk to you about that. What we're doing is we're building out this grid. And think about it. When was the last time we built infrastructure? Let's see. A long time ago, it was roads and highways, infrastructure. The words pave the way. We use those today. And then it was internet infrastructure. Maybe I'm missing 1 or 2 between there, I'm sure. But it's, it's fiber and copper. Okay, you were trenching things and building infrastructure. And then it's wireless, right? We're putting up big towers and over the wireless airways, building infrastructure. Well, guess what? We're going to build infrastructure again. Whenever you trench, it's a good sign. This is what America needs to do now, okay? So when we start to trench and we build the grid and expand the grid into the parking lot, there's some problems with that, and there's some opportunity with that. And the problem is, oh my gosh, what if everybody decided to charge their cars at the peak rate in the summer at 3 p.m.? What would happen? Oh, we've got great opportunity there, which I'll touch upon later and remind me if I don't. But mostly what will happen is the grid will be updated. It will task the grid so that the smartest minds will realize it's a 3rd-generation antiquated grid and it's highly inefficient. How do we make it more efficient? How do we put our brains behind it? And we will just task that grid. Because the important thing is we're all building infrastructure out there. And then where the rubber meets the wireless, some phenomenal things are going to happen. So what phenomenal things can happen? I talked about electrons being fungible. I know that some of you heard that keynote and said, what the heck does that mean? Really, what is that? And there's others who have sort of, done some financing recognize that once something can be converted into a currency, then it has tremendous upside potential. So I'm saying convert these electrons for cash. Because when things get economically driven, things get very exciting, and then we start to wake up. So there's some great examples and business models associated with these electric vehicle charging stations out there that go well beyond, I've got to fill up my tank. It's all going to happen. But it has to happen at a rate where you can build electric vehicle infrastructure and make a real difference in the next battle using this deployed strategy. I know Congresswoman spoke about the profits in the oil companies. I think they have it tough. It's hard. They're energy companies too. So I know that we need a real strategy. We don't just want to catch up. You know, if you look at $2.50 a gallon. Look at 25 miles per the gallon of a car. Okay, pretty reasonable. At $2.50 a gallon and I have a 25 mile per gallon vehicle, I could drive X. Okay, with me? Price of gas goes to $3.50 a gallon. Oof, $1. I don't want to let you know how much $1 increase in the cost of gas causes a sucking out of the economy right from the American public. We've got the numbers in the tens and hundreds of billions. But let's get back to the point. So now you have 35 miles per gallon, $3.50 price of gas, right? So you're kind of staying level. Then you go to $4.50 for the price of gas. Well, that's 45 miles per gallon. Hey, the Prius hybrid does that. It's a wonderful vehicle. By the way, it has the highest resale rate, and it gets you in and out of high productivity land up and down the HOV lane, HOV lane, access. Pretty good. But you're kind of still staying at the same relative value, aren't you? Well, what happens when the price goes to $5.50 a gallon? And the vehicles out there are still just hybrid vehicles that'll get you 50. Well, you need a 55 mile per gallon vehicle just to stay afloat, just to stay where you were when the price of gas was $2.50 and you drove a 25 mile per gallon vehicle. And you know what, folks? Today, I bet if I took a cross section, I have a 22 mile per gallon vehicle that I have to drive today. And within a very short time, the price of gas is clobbering us. So you need a real strategy, one that is 3 steps ahead of oil and the price of gas, so that the fluctuation happens and we don't care. The Chevy Volt, for people who drove it for 2,000 miles, they have this really cool telematic dashboard. It says 68 miles per gallon they've averaged over 2,000 miles on a bad day. 68, those are some numbers to be proud of. That's, twice as much as, 30, whatever. And you look at the peaks, and by the way, once you begin to drive electric vehicles, you realize you play these great mental games with yourself to get the most out of the electricity. Peaks of over 120 miles per gallon. Those are some real numbers. Now I could push back the oil companies, okay, with that strategy. That's a serious hammer. Multiply that by 100 times in 4 years, 100 different vehicles out there. All of you guys buying them because you deployed the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Now that's a strategy. Now what happens? Price of gas goes from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2. We still need gas. We still need oil, okay? But now we're in control. So I would suggest that we look at a real strategy for the deployment. Go electric vehicle. Don't ever be complacent with $5 tipping points or $4 tipping points or $3 tipping points for that matter. Join in, deploy, be successful, win the war, make this country the best place the way it used to be in some way, because it has changed, reduce our dependency on foreign oil, clean up the climate as a byproduct of doing this. You don't even have to have the argument. And be successful, because ultimately, it's a cliche, but our kids deserve it, people on this planet deserve it, and our kids' kids deserve it. So with that, I want to thank you for the time. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to let you guys know about what's available. You can go to our website at EV Advise and get more information, and I'm fully accessible. Thank you very much.